The GEPF announced in October 2023 the launch of its transformation policy. Now, if you're a GEPF member, you might be intrigued, but also concerned. Intrigued because it promises social and economic transformation. Concerned because of that nagging question. How transparent is this process? Now, it's not just about the money. It's about trust. It's about ethics, and it's about your future. You've worked hard for your GEPF benefits, and the last thing you want is your money being caught up in unsavory activities like fraud and corruption. I'm Devon Iker, a certified financial planner and a retire versus resign specialist. Stay tuned as I dig deeper into your top concerns that you should have about GEPF's new policy and why it might just be time for you to start asking some serious questions. Now, just so that you know, I'll be covering 5 crucial elements that every GEPF member must know. So make sure that you watch until the end. Now, I want to start this off by having a look at the guide itself, the transformation, the PDF that GEPF have put out, right? Now, you can access this under press releases on GEPF's website. I've highlighted certain information. I'm not going to go into the full detail because I want to share with you more of the concerns that are likely to come up as a result of this. So you can see here that the notice had come in for members on the 10th of October 2023, and I've highlighted certain information, again, GEPF's transformation policy. And then you'll notice here, it says the transformation policy will be used to guide investments that will promote socio-economic transformation, identifying specific impact areas that will be targeted to realize our objectives. So on paper, everything seems to be above board. As you scroll further down, it goes on to say, it is important to note that ultimately, if done correctly, the socio-economic transformation of our economy will result in an improved quality of life of our members, pensioners, and beneficiaries, as well as the disadvantaged members of society. And the words I've highlighted here is if done correctly, which is one of the risk elements that I'll talk to you as I go through the 5 elements I want you to be mindful of, right? Towards the end here, I've highlighted one more piece of information I feel important for you to know, where he goes on to say, I believe that for far too long, the financial sector has been comfortable with the same. So when the reference is made to the financial sector, now you're referring to the sector as a whole, which would include the big players like Annual Mutual, Allen Gray, Sanlam, Coronation, meaning they're set in their ways, and the suggestion here, or the recommendation is to do something different. So it's one of the areas that I want to cover. Now let's go look at the 5 areas I want you to be mindful of. As we go through this, I've made notes of each of the 5, so I just want you to pay close attention. Now, critically important is whenever GEPF launches something new, there's always this huge influx of members wanting to resign. And it's not the way that you should be dealing with this ideally, because you don't want to make decisions based on emotions. So what I want to offer to you is rather take a step back, analyze what's taking place, make sure you have your pieces correctly before you take a decision on whether you're going to aim to retire or resign. Right? So let's first start to have a look at the risk from this situation. The risk, firstly, is not done by others. Meaning if you have a look at Mutual, Sanlam, Allen Gray, Momentum, Discovery, all the big players and the big investors, they're not doing something like this, right? Where they're going heavy into the BEE companies. There would be some portions that's going in. However, they have to be a lot more guarded in terms of how the money is going to be invested. Now, I'm not saying that how GEPF is, or that GEPF is not being guarded, but you've got to ask yourself the question, is this going to open GEPF up to some fraud and corruption? Because as you know, there have been a lot of companies that are fronting to be this BEE setups, where in actual fact, it's just a company that got established to take money away. So how would GEPF navigate around this, right? What about conflict of interest? By this, I'm referring to if you have a board member who has a family member who sets up a company, and now it's a BEE company, will money now be handed over to this company? So what's there in terms of a conflict of interest policy? What's there in terms of transparency? So how soon is this information going to be brought over to members? And why I'm bringing up all of this is there's a history of investments that haven't really gone well. And it goes under the radar because GEPF has a huge amount of money. Let's take an example of Daybreak Farms. Now, I don't want you to take my word for it. So you can head over onto Google, do exactly what I'm doing here. You can see what I've done. I've just done a Google search, Daybreak Farms. And the one I'm going to click on here, how Daybreak Farms lost more than 300 million in profit. So I'm clicking on that. I won't go into the exact detail of the article because you can go into the details more if you need the time, right? Or if you want to. But notice it says here, the extent of corruption at the state-owned Daybreak Farms is worse than initially thought. Times Live has now revealed that the poultry company lost more than 300 million in profits in the 2 years that it was led by a board connected to a senior PIC officials. So this is just a 2-year period where 300 million got lost. And it goes on further to say this. It's easy for the PIC to hide these things when you consider the size of the fund itself, which is 2.6 trillion. If we talk about 300 million in profit losses, it gets lost in the numbers that are being reported, which sort of makes sense, right? Because if you have 2.6 trillion, there's a lot of zeros inside it. So losing 300 million, it's almost like a drop in the ocean. However, let's start to have a look at the impact for members. And in addition to this, you've got to start asking yourself the question, 300 million over a 2-year period is a significant amount of money, but so is 10 million rand. So when the first loss had come in at 10 million rand, why wasn't this stopped? Why did it have to go on to a 300 million rand loss? And this is where I say you've got to start asking some serious questions about, again, the ethics behind GEPF running this type of structure. What's the next thing I want you to be mindful of? Heading back onto the iPad is you're going to notice that GEPF is going to push members to retire, pardon me. There's going to be a strong push for members to retire because assuming that the investments don't perform well, if the investing is not performing well here, what's going to take place is GEPF still needs access to funds. So observe what happens when a member chooses to retire. Let's say it's yourself, right? You're aiming at retiring and you have a certain amount of money. I'm going to use an example here just to make math, just to give you a case, right? So let's say you have a 5 million rand that's sitting inside your resignation benefit. That's your total resignation benefit. And assuming that a member passes away after 5 years, within the first 5 years, right, of retiring, perhaps the total capital that's getting paid out might work out to 3 million that's getting paid out in total, which means there's a profit sitting behind here of 2 million rand, and that sits inside of GEPF, right? Now, in my example, I'm saying that this is an individual who doesn't have a spouse, but even if there is a spouse, remember GEPF is keeping back a portion of income. Let's assume it's 50%. So if that's the case, what happens to the remaining 50%? Why does it go to GEPF? So in this instance, you're going to find there's a strong push from GEPF to want members to retire. It's going to be that strong push for them to want you to retire. Now, I'm not saying that that you must resign. All I'm saying is you've got to be guarded. Remember, every single situation for each member is different. You want to analyze your situation based on your set of circumstances to decide whether it's better for you to retire or resign. So be mindful of it because, again, there's going to be the strong push for members to retire. And you can check this out. So if you are engaging with any GEPF member or GEPF official, when they come in to do any presentations to you, just get a gauge to see, based on your situation, are they advising any members to opt to resign? Remember, not every single member will work well for resignation, and not every single member will work well for retirement. You're also going to notice an increase in resignation. Now, why am I saying this? Why am I saying there's going to be an increase in resignations? Simple. It's because of this word, trust. There are a lot of members who have raised a number of trust concerns around GEPF. Significant number of members, and there are more resignations that are happening now than ever before. I can tell you myself, I've helped more people this year with resigning than ever before in my professional career. It's just that GEPF's losing a lot of trust in members. And because of access to information, for example, if you've had a look at my YouTube channel, if you've had a look at some of the testimonials from members, members are starting to see that with resignation, if the planning is done properly, it opens you up to paying less tax. It opens you up to an ability where you are able to earn an income for life. It provides you with the opportunity to get a medical aid without you being restricted on your options. There are solutions for cap leave. There are solutions to leave your money to your family so you're able to leave a legacy. See? So if you've had a look at some of the other videos, more and more members are starting to open up to this idea. And this is the reason why members are going to feel when the solution's working well on the resignation side, they would feel that it's something that they can trust more than what's happening within GEPF. Because let's face it, if you are aiming at resigning and you structure that well, you are in control of your investment, which means if you don't like the place that the money is being invested, you can change it. If you don't like the insurance company, you change the insurance company. You don't like your financial advisor, you change the financial advisor. So you're always in control. Whereas within retirement, if you are leaving your funds within GEPF and you're aiming at retire, now you're losing the control. So if you're losing the control, it means GEPF is running the investment for you. And if there's a trust issue with GEPF, this is what's going to result in members wanting to resign. Let's look at the fourth option. Very important here. I'm reminding you, GEPF is a defined benefit fund, which means everything around GEPF operates in terms of formulas. Everything operates in terms of formulas, which means you shouldn't have a market loss. See, you shouldn't have, and I'm putting an asterisk here, right? No market loss. Now I want you to test this. I want you to test this. So what you can do for me is you get a GEPF statement as at the end of this month, and then you get another GEPF statement as at the end of 6 months from now. And you're going to observe your value, right? So you're going to get a statement end of this month that you're watching this video. This is one statement, right? And then you're going to get a statement as of end of 6 months from now. Okay. And you're going to compare the resignation value between the two. So you have a look at your resign value here, and you have a look at your resign value here. Now, why I'm asking you to do this exercise, I want you to see it for yourself. You notice that your resignation value would increase in 6 months' time. It doesn't matter what's happening from an investment perspective. It's increasing because GEPF is defined benefit fund. Everything's calculated based on formulas. Now, what you've got to be mindful though is if GEPF's not investing well, then they could run the risk of not having enough money to pay all the members. So assuming every single member had resigned, they don't have enough money to pay every single member, then they're going to start making some adjustments in terms of the formula, right? So that's where you'd notice GEPF would then do a reduction in formula, adjust their formula, which means the resignation benefits have reduced. Now, if you've watched my previous video where I spoke about this, you would have noticed on the 26th of October 2022, GEPF have sent out a notice, and that became effective on the 1st of November 2022. It was only 3 working days notice that was served to members, and members lost significant amount of money inside their resignation value. So it begs the question, right? If GEPF is doing really, really well with the investing, why are members then having to face formula changes? Why are members then having to have their resignation benefits reduced? So you want to analyze that information carefully. Next, you want to be mindful in terms of pensioners. So even though you might not be at that stage where you're ready to retire as yet, or even if you're at the doorstep of choosing whether to retire or resign, I want you to go back and have a look at GEPF's increases. Now you'd notice the increases are not related to inflation. Now, why is it important to have an increase related to inflation? Take anything for that matter. Let's just take a loaf of bread, right? Assume the price of the bread is 20 Rand in our example, right? The factor that's making the price of bread go up every year is inflation. So if your money is not keeping pace with inflation, then you're not going to be able to afford the loaf of bread. I'm using an easy example here, right? But if your money is not keeping up with inflation, then you're not going to be able to afford the same things that you would have been affording previously. Now, what GEPF is saying is from an increase perspective, they are guaranteeing members 75% of inflation. So it's not going to be inflation linked, right? Meaning if inflation is sitting at 10%, they're not saying they're going to give you 10% as an increase. But I want you to go back and have a look on GEPF site, on the press releases, go and see what has been the increases. Because again, if investing is done well and structured properly, isn't it right for members to get an increase linked to inflation? If investing is done well and GEPF is focusing on the interest of members, why not do an increase that's inflation plus? So that the member who have worked hard for this money are getting more of the money that belongs to them. Because if members are only getting inflation, and let's assume GEPF makes a huge return, what's happening with the rest of that money? If members are only getting 75% of inflation and GEPF makes a huge profit, what's happened to the rest of that money? So there are 5 elements I want you to be mindful of. I hope this has been insightful for you. In fact, please comment below and share with me which of these 5 elements you found to be most beneficial for you. And if you've not already done so, I encourage you to subscribe to my channel. Have a look at some of the other videos that's inside there. It's important for you to empower yourself with the knowledge so that you can make more informed decisions. And I'll see you in the next video.